Welcome to today's episode where we discuss some essential skills that every boater should know. So we're going to be discussing wind and current basics, whether you're mooring, anchoring, or docking. Before we dive in, remember Nautic Ed has a complete anchoring course to help you, and they also have a course on maneuvering under power in a marina. So that's going to be included in the show notes below. So let's get into it. Wind and current basics. So you always want to assess the wind and current before you moor, before you anchor, docking. The big factor is windage, which is the effect of wind on your boat due to everything above the waterline. You know, most boats these days, especially modern boats, are very tall off the water. That just makes a lot more windage. But sails and dodgers and biminis, they all contribute to the wind forces on the boat. Another thing to be aware of is that wind forces increase quadratically with the wind velocity. So basically, every time the wind doubles in speed, the forces that are put upon through windage increase by 4. So always check, the wind direction when you're coming in. And how exactly do you go and see that? Well, you look around, you can see the flags on other boats, ripples on the water, or smoke. There are a few clues out there. Just look around and you'll be able to kind of gauge where the wind's coming from. Now, when it comes to current, right, water density is usually, it's about like 800 times more dense than air. So even a small current can affect your boat. So, when you're coming into a marina or you're out on the water, observe fixed objects, pylons, mooring balls, buoys, and you can usually look at how the water is rippling by them to understand the current direction. It also depends really on where you're at. Up in New England, there's only a few areas that have really strong tides. Down south, it's probably a different case, but there's a few ways of determining which direction the current is headed, and ultimately it's going to be deciding between wind or current and which one has the greater impact on the boat. Now, the combined effects of wind and current. So wind and current rarely align. And so if you're in an area and there's boats on mooring balls or there's boats that are anchored, always observe how all these other boats are oriented for clues on which forces are the prevailing forces. When there's no other boats that are around, you can always just stop your boat, basically come to a full stop and see what happens. Is it the wind carrying the bow? Or is the boat going in a different direction due to the current? Now, when you are mooring or anchoring, you want to be approaching a mooring ball or an anchorage based on the prevailing forces. So if there is high wind, you want to approach from downwind, right? You want to go in the direction of the wind. If there's high current, you want to approach from down the current, even if that differs from the wind direction. Basically, if you're unsure, pause, observe, and adjust accordingly. Now, some docking tips, right? Docking is seemingly challenging no matter what. And if it's windy, it can be an extra pain in the butt. So, if you're in an area that is high current, sometimes it can feel like if you were to step off, you would be on a moving treadmill. So you don't want to be practicing these docking skills in a crowded marina. You just want to avoid it. Ultimately, what ends up happening is you're so freaked out by it that you don't actually want to do it, and you just don't get the reps in. So there's a few things that you can do in that regard, right? You can either go out, take the boat out of the marina, go to a mooring ball in the open water, and try to practice a lot of these maneuvers where you're not going to really damage anything. And you can see how current reacts or wind reacts to the boat. In certain areas, there's like an off season. So up in New England, it's from November to May. Usually in those times, a lot of the marinas are empty. So if you manage to get your boat in early, there's a little room that you can practice some of these skills. So that is windage and current. And if you guys are looking for any useful information, Nautic Ed has an anchoring course that's linked into the show notes. And there's also links to the maneuvering under power course as well. So those are some good resources if you want to really expand your knowledge on what's going on when you're either mooring or docking or anchoring or just maneuvering under power in the marina.